And I pray that as we study it today, it will speak to your heart. Now we're going to try to cover two topics this afternoon, so we'll attempt to do that and see how far we get. So let me begin by sharing my screen, and we'll get started this afternoon. All right. So the book of Ecclesiastes, we give this overview, and I think, Naomi, did you send this chart out last week?
I can't remember. Wait a minute.
Okay, because if not, after today's lesson, we can make sure we send it out and people get this chart, because this gives you a good overview of the book of Ecclesiastes. We said that in the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon uses the phrase "under the sun" 29 times. There's 12 chapters in this book, and out of the 12 chapters, he uses the word "under the sun" 29 times. So when you think about it, that's more than 2 times a chapter that he talks about under the sun. So in this book, Solomon is actually looking at life under the sun. And when he looks at life under the sun, he kind of gives 3 perspectives as far as how you can look at life. And the first one is a fatalistic perspective. And so some people believe that this is the...
Excuse me, are you going to widen your screen?
Oh, okay.
And
thank
then
you.
that chart was not in the notes from last week or this week.
Okay.
Okay.
All right.
Okay.
Okay, thank
you.
you. Mm-hmm. He talks about and some people look at the book totally from a fatalistic perspective and just say in this life there's nothing to be gained. Just going back to that old Doris Day song, "Que sera, sera," whatever will be, will be. And then I believe mainly Solomon is looking at Ecclesiastes from a humanistic perspective, and he's given his point of view on life and on the things that he has seen in life. And we see, if we follow the humanistic and fatalistic perspective out to its normal logic, these are things that are in the world. All right. And John tells us what's in the world. He says, first of all, there's no love for the Father in the world. There's the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. And we see the end of these things is Peter talks about they will be consumed. The first time God destroyed the world, he destroyed it with water, the flood of Noah's time. The second time he will destroy the world will be with fire, according to 2 Peter. And Peter says that all the elements of the earth will melt. So everything that you own, everything that you invest in this life is going to burn up, and it's all going to turn to ashes. And so we ask the question, if we look at things from a humanistic or fatalistic perspective, what shall we profit if we gain the whole world? We don't, just think about all the things. And I was sharing with you guys last week how that, sometimes I just feel like I got a bunch of stuff, right? I feel sorry for my kids, right? When I go home to be with the Lord and they got to figure out what to do with all this stuff. That's going to be that's going to be my reward for them, for all the years of broken windows, broken appliances, all the food that they ate, all the clothes that I put on their back, all the rides that I gave them, right? That's going to be my payback. I'm just going to leave all this stuff and let them try to figure out what to do with it. All right, amen. Just messing with y'all, saints. But we accumulate a bunch of stuff in this life. And when we do, we see that in the end, it doesn't profit us anything. And then, it all turns to ashes. So Solomon doesn't do this a whole lot in Ecclesiastes, but he does paint a theistic perspective. And he says a life lived without God is worthless in eternity. In Ecclesiastes 12:13, he says, fear God. So what is Solomon trying to get us to do? Again, he uses the phrase under the sun 29 times. So what is he trying to get us to do? He's trying to get us to look above the sun, right? And if we look above the sun, that's where our life will have meaning, in this life, under the sun. When we have the theistic perspective, that is, we bring God into what we're dealing with, then our life takes on meaning. We look at the threefold outline of Ecclesiastes, the dilemma declared. Solomon is addressing a big problem in this book. The dilemma declared, the dilemma delineated, that means he studies it, and then the dilemma deciphered, he comes up with the answer. So the dilemma declared is that there's no profit in things under the sun. That he states that right up front. There's no profit in things. And then for 11 chapters, he goes on and talks about the dilemma. Life is an endless cycle of events. We have an inability to do anything permanent. In this life, you can't do anything permanent. It doesn't last. There's no lasting enjoyment in the things of this life. We're going to look at that today. Everybody dies. And in the end, nobody has an advantage. We all die. And then I dread getting to chapter 12, where we look at the twilight years, those senior years, and how they're plagued with evil. And so he talks about that. So he studies these things for 11 chapters. And then, praise God, in the end, he gives us the answer. The dilemma deciphered. He says, in order for us to make sense out of life, we got to fear God, and we got to keep his commandments. So that's the threefold outline of Ecclesiastes. If you understand this outline right here, you understand the book of Ecclesiastes. The dilemma declared, the dilemma delineated, and then the dilemma deciphered. So Solomon, we're picking up in chapter 1, and you should have the notes in verses 12 through 15. Solomon is looking for satisfaction, right? And he's looking for satisfaction under the sun. Notice what he says in verse 12. I, the preacher, was king over Israel in Jerusalem. As the king of Jerusalem, Solomon had the authority to explore whatever he wanted to explore to find fulfillment in life, right? He was the king. He was over everything. So he had the authority to be able to search for satisfaction in life. But notice in verse 13, Solomon's claim to search everything. So he had the authority to search it. And then he said that he searched it. He said, I gave my heart to search, to seek and to search out wisdom concerning all things that are done under heaven. This is sore travail God has given to the sons of man to be exercised therewith. So Solomon did a thorough investigation, and we're going to see that here in a second. He did a thorough investigation to see if he could find satisfaction in this life. Yet he found this. Notice he says the word travail. He found even the process, saints, even the process of searching was painful for him. And he came to two conclusions. When he searched for satisfaction in this life, he came to two conclusions. He says, first of all, in verse 14, that it's all vanity. That after exploring everything in this life, he concluded that it was vanity and it was a chasing after the wind. And then another thing that he says in verse 15, he says that he also saw that there were some crooked things that could not be made straight. In his search for satisfaction, he just stumbled across this second thing. And, I've talked about this time and time again. And that is how that some people in life are dealt a bad hand. And that bad hand is never straightened out in this life, right? I mean, just think of people who innocently lost their life. Somebody just randomly killed them, right? How is that ever going to be made straight? I mean, again, under the sun, we're talking about under the sun. How is that ever going to be made straight? The way that Black people were treated during slavery times, our ancestors, when you look at what they went through, and then some of them were even killed. You know, they were beaten, they were whipped, they were made to serve in the hot sun in the cotton fields, right? And then if they didn't do right, you know, some of them were killed. Saints, let me ask you a question. Solomon said there's some crooked things that can't be made straight. How was that ever made straight? How is the fact that 10 million Jews lost their lives, right? I was watching a video on Ecclesiastes, and the guy was talking about, pregnant women during the Holocaust. And just think, if you were in a German concentration camp and you were pregnant, that you were bringing your child into an environment that the child might be subject to experimentation. The child was going to be subject to suffering, right? Saints, those are some crooked things. And Solomon makes the observation, how can those things ever be made straight? So he talks about his search for satisfaction, but he just stumbled across this truth right here. Now, look at Solomon's, not only was he the king in Jerusalem, but look at some of his credentials, that even as he began to look at things that he could see would bring satisfaction. He was a master of economics, according to 1 Kings 4. He was an expert in botany and zoology in Song of Solomon. He talked about flowers and he talked about animals, right? He was an expert in botany and zoology. Notice this, he wrote over 3,000 proverbs and over 1,000 songs. He was very wealthy. He was a military genius. If you read the Song of Solomon, he was a doctor of love. And somebody might say he was an expert in relationships, or maybe he was not an expert in relationships. He had 700 wives and 300, as one little boy said, porcupines, concubines. So look at his credentials. I mean, what more could a man have that's trying to find satisfaction in this life? So he's looking for satisfaction in this life. You might remember the song by the Rolling Stones, and it was, I Can't Get No Satisfaction. And that's Solomon. Solomon could have wrote this song. Well, Solomon could have at least used the title of this song and said that in this, under the sun, I can't get no satisfaction. You know, and think about how the world tries to make us dissatisfied. You know, why do people, think about this, saints, why do they put so many commercials on TV? Think about this. It's to make you dissatisfied with your life, right? And the Rolling Stones sang about it. Look what they said. When I'm driving in my car and the man comes on the radio, he's telling me more and more about some useless information supposed to fire my imagination. When I'm watching my TV and the man comes on and tells me how white my shirts can be, but he can't be a man because he doesn't smoke the same cigarettes as me, right? Just look at the words of those songs. And isn't that what advertising does? And Mick Jagger, who sang the song, and the Rolling Stones, you know, they came to the conclusion that, you know, these things came to cause you to be dissatisfied with your life. You know, if you see the latest and greatest thing that comes on, you know, that makes you dissatisfied with your life. So this world, saints, this world is set up to cause you to be dissatisfied. Because if you were dissatisfied, then you're gonna spend more money, right? If you want a certain product, you know, for your hair, certain product for your skin, or something for your home, you know, they got these little Roombas. I see them advertised on the Home Shopping Network, where you can just walk away and, you know, turn it on and it'll vacuum all your floors, right? How many people don't want something like that? Man, you could get dissatisfied real quick with your vacuum cleaner, right? that you got to lug up and down, that you got to plug into the wall, that you got to hold the cord, right? Man, it'd be great to have one of those little Roombas just where you let it vacuum your house for you. Okay. So I mean, these things are good, and let's be honest. I'll be honest with you. I got some of these things. You have some of these things, but what is the purpose of advertising? The purpose of advertising is to cause us to be dissatisfied. And when you are dissatisfied, then that's when you will go out and buy a product. And so Solomon searched for satisfaction. And let's look at his quest for satisfaction. He sought for satisfaction in wisdom, in wit, in wine, in works, in workers, in world renown. And then he just got to the point that he said, whatsoever, whatsoever, I looked at. So, I would say that he did a pretty thorough search under the sun for satisfaction. All right. So, I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago, and this was on TV a couple of years ago, and I just had my phone and I snapped this picture while they were giving this news story about this guy, Anthony Bourdain. Now, I never really sat down and watched him, but I saw like highlights, and this guy traveled all over the world, right? He traveled all over the world. And according to this news report, he had everything: success beyond his wildest dreams, money beyond his wildest dreams. And some of you probably have seen him on TV when he was alive. But what did he do? I mean, this guy traveled the world and he took his life, right? He had everything that a person could want, but yet and still, he did not find satisfaction in this life. So what's that telling us? No matter how many things we accumulate, we will never find satisfaction. We will always be seeking more. Somebody asked the rich man, how much more does he want? And he said, just a little bit more, just a little bit more, right? So you'll never be satisfied in this life. So he searched for satisfaction in wisdom. Notice what he said, verses 16 through 18. I communed with my own heart, saying, lo, I am come to great estate. I have gotten more wisdom than all they that have been before me in Jerusalem. Yea, my heart had great experience of wisdom and knowledge. I gave my heart to know wisdom and to know madness. And then he continues on and says, this is folly. He said, I perceive that this is vexation of spirit. He had wisdom. Now, again, I think there's a difference between godly wisdom and the world's wisdom. And I believe that Solomon did have godly wisdom when he wrote the book of Proverbs. But I think that in the book of Ecclesiastes, more often than not, Solomon is talking about worldly wisdom. And so he said, I had all the wisdom. And he said, it was just vexation of spirit, and it was much grief. And he said that when he increased in this world's wisdom, he said he just increased in sorrow, right? That the things that the more he understood about this life, and the more wisdom he had about the things of this world, notice what he said. He said, that just increased my knowledge and my sorrow. So you're not going to find satisfaction in searching the wisdom of this world. Notice in chapter 2, verses 1 and 2, he searched for satisfaction in wit, right? He said, I said in my heart, go to now, I will prove thee with mirth. Therefore, enjoy pleasure. Notice what he said, enjoy pleasure. And notice what he said, this is also vanity. He said, I said of laughter, it is mad, and of mirth, what does it? He sought for satisfaction in wisdom. He sought for satisfaction in wit or pleasure. He said that, if I just laugh, if I just enjoy laughter in this life, and he said, this is also vanity, and I've shared with you my testimony. You see Richard Pryor on the screen there. I had, when I was, before I came to the Lord, I had memorized all of Richard Pryor's albums. And for those of you who know Richard Pryor, you know that he didn't have his words were not edifying, right? He took a lot of foul words. But I had memorized, again, this before I came to the Lord. I had memorized, all that. And I remember that, me and my friends, we would get high and they would say, Glaze, quote us some Pryor. And, I would just quote Richard Pryor, man, and we would laugh and we would just have a good time, right? And then whenever we all went home, that's when the fun, the laughter was gone, right? So I found that there's no satisfaction, there's no lasting satisfaction, even in laughter, because laughter goes away. Saints, that's why we should seek joy, right? Because joy stays with us. The joy of the Lord is my strength. That's why we should, seek things that bring us joy, joy that's found in the Holy Ghost, right? For that's the kingdom of God, righteousness, peace, and joy in the Holy Ghost. The satisfaction of laughter, it goes away, but joy stays with us. So Solomon said, I search for satisfaction in wit. Now here goes something that many people have searched for satisfaction in the bottle, right? Notice what he says in verse 3. I sought in my heart to give myself to wine, yet acquainting my heart with wisdom, and to lay hold on folly till I might see that which was the good for the sons of man, which they should do under the sun all the days of their life. So in his search for satisfaction, he sought wine. I don't know if you guys see, again, I'm giving myself away. There was a guy by the name of Gil Scott-Heron, and he sang a song, and the name of the song was The Bottle. I used to think when I was listening to the song, I thought the name of the song was In the Bottom. I lived in Braddock, or North Braddock, but there was down by the river, there was a place called The Bottom. I thought he was singing about the bottom, but no, the name of the song was In the Bottle. And he goes through and he talks about, people living in the bottle. And at the end of the song, he says, if you ever come looking for me, you know where I'm bound to be, in the bottle. And that was prophetic of his life. And so and his thing might not necessarily have been wine, but it was drugs that, took him down, right? And so he sang about the bottle, and that you're not going to find satisfaction in the bottle. But yet and still, in his life, Gil Scott-Heron, he ended up ruining his life because he was seeking satisfaction in substances of this world. So you're not going to find it in the substances of this world. Notice that he searched for satisfaction in works. Look at verses 4 through 6. He said, I made me great works. I built houses. I planted vineyards. I made gardens and orchards and trees. In them I had all kind of fruit. Look at this. I made pools of water, water therewith the wood that bringeth forth the trees. He built the temple. He built a palace for himself. He built other houses. He built pools. He planted trees, vineyards, and gardens, right? And he continued his search for satisfaction. Notice the next thing that he did. He searched for satisfaction in workers. Look at verses 7 and 8. He said, I got servants and maidens. I had servants born in my house. I also had great possessions, small cattle, above all that were in Jerusalem. I gathered also silver and gold and peculiar treasures of kings and provinces. Look at this. He said, I got men singers and women singers, the delights of the sons of men, as musical instruments and all sorts. Notice, he said, I had servants. He said, I had people to wait on me hand and foot. And if I wanted to, I could bring the Temptations to my palace every night and get them to perform a concert. Oh, wouldn't that be nice? Right? Now, again, you say, Pastor Glaze, you're getting kind of worldly there. How come you don't bring some gospel groups? All right. Well, yeah, we can bring some gospel groups. You can bring some, but I'm just trying to paint the reality of what Solomon was dealing with. Solomon was dealing with, human workers, human entertainers, and these guys, they could come in and they could harmonize, they could put the moves, they could dance in harmony, and Solomon could just sit back on his throne and just look at them, put on a 2 or 3 hour concert and just enjoy it. So he looked for satisfaction in workers, in musicians. He looked for satisfaction in all these areas. And notice what he says in verse 9. He says, every time I read this, I just have to laugh. He said, so I was great, right? Can you imagine yourself saying that, right? So I was great. I'm great, right? So I was great. Solomon says, so I was great. And I increased more than all they that were before me in Jerusalem. He said, and my wisdom also stayed with me. And so Solomon was wiser than anybody in the world. His fame, notice, it spread everywhere. He said, I was great. He said, Solomon said, I was so bad, and when I say bad, I mean, I had it going on this much, that the Queen of Sheba heard about me, right? The Queen of Sheba heard about me, and she came and she said, who is this bad boy named Solomon? She came from Africa. She came from Ethiopia to find out who this dude was, right? And so he says that I was great. Now, notice this. In case he missed something, saints, in case he missed something, notice what he says in verse 10. And whatsoever my eyes desired, I kept not from them. I withheld not my heart from any joy, and my heart rejoiced in all my labor, and this was my portion of all my labor. Solomon said that I did not restrain myself from anything that I saw. He said, and at this point, he's talking about self-gratification, right? That whatever I wanted, whatever my eyes saw, I just went and took it, right? I wonder if he is talking about another man's lady. If I saw another man's lady and I wanted, he had 700 wives and 300 concubines. And then he says right here, whatever my eyes wanted, whatever they desired, he said, I did not keep back from them. And so, like I said, in case he missed anything, here is the coverall statement, whatsoever I saw. And then notice in verse 11, he said, then I looked on all my works that my hands had wrought, and on all the labor that I had labored to do, and behold, all was vanity and vexation of spirit, and there was no profit under the sun. Wow. All the stuff that we just got finished talking about. Look at his conclusion. His conclusion was that wisdom, wit, works, workers, world renown, whatever he saw, all those things was just vanity and vexation of spirit. So we can learn something from him. This is a guy that had everything and did everything. We might not be able to have everything and do everything, but what a powerful lesson for us to learn here. And the powerful lesson is that this guy that could do all this, he did not find satisfaction in this world. And so we want to look at, instead of life under the S-U-N, life under the S-O-N. All right. And the first thing that we want to say is, seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and God will give you everything that you need. Saints, Solomon sought for it. He didn't find satisfaction. But if we seek God and we seek God's kingdom, God will make sure that we have everything that we need. The second thing, life under the SON. Don't allow the things of this world to cause you to become dissatisfied, right? I mean, because this world is designed to cause you to be dissatisfied. It's always going to be pushing you to get bigger and better. It's always going to be pushing you to get something new. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. I'm just saying don't let it cause you to become dissatisfied or discontent, right? That's my point. Because First John says all that's in the world, the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life, right? And so don't let this world allow you to become dissatisfied. I think that's where a lot of people get in trouble. Maybe that's why some people take their lives, is because they realize that they can't be satisfied in this world. They're dissatisfied. You know, just think of the people that have tried to, and I don't, there's nothing wrong with trying to do better for your kids, right? There's nothing wrong with trying to do better for your kids. But just think, some people, that's what they, you know, they work just to make things better for their kids, right? You know, I don't want them to have the same life that I had growing up. And so, you know, again, if you want life to be better, there's nothing wrong with that. But you can't push yourself to the point of dissatisfaction that you start doing things that put you under stress. You start doing things that cause you to be filled with anxiety, right? And then learn how to be content. Paul said that I've learned in whatever state I am, therewith to be content. So we look at the fact that under the sun, under the SUN, you can't find any lasting satisfaction. But when you look under the SON, when you live your life under the SON, you can live a life that glorifies God. Let's move on to chapter 3, Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And in Ecclesiastes chapter 3, it talks about a time and season for everything. Now, many of us remember the song by the Byrds, to everything turn, turn. There is a season, turn, turn, and a time and purpose for everything under heaven. You remember that song, right? I think that's an old 60s song, right? They say, well, where did they get that from? They got that from Ecclesiastes chapter 3. And that's what we're getting ready to look at now. Ecclesiastes chapter 3, you know, where it talks about there is a time and season, you know, for everything, for every purpose under heaven. So when we say that there is a time and a season, notice chapter 3 and verse 1. To everything there is a season, and to every purpose under heaven, and a time to every purpose under heaven. He uses two words here, the word season and the word time. And when you look at the word time, it comes from the Greek word. Well, let's do the word season. It comes from the Greek word kairos, right? And you know, you've heard me preach sermons on kairos before. And kairos means an appointed time, right? It's that opportune time. I'm gonna say a little bit more about that here in a second. And then there's time as far as chronos, and that means a determined period of time. So let me see if I can make it a little bit simpler for you. In the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, there are two words for time in Ecclesiastes 3:1. Kairos, which is an open window of opportunity, an appointed time for an occurrence to take place. You know, it's a good time. You know, we might say it's a good time to buy a car, right? Or, you know, like right now is not a good time to buy a house. but it's a good time to sell a house, right? According to the experts, right? So that's what Kairos means. Kairos means that opportunity, that window of opportunity that we have the opportunity to walk through. You know, we have many Kairos moments throughout our life, right? Windows of opportunity that might close and never open again for us. Opportunities to go to school, you know, opportunities to, you know, maybe make a major purchase, opportunities to do certain things. You know, this is what the word Kairos means. As a matter of fact, I'll use this illustration, right? We're still in football season. We're in the playoffs. So you see right here, the guy with the football, you know, he's running, and look at that space that he has to run in, right? And so he's got to hit that space at the right time. You know what I'm saying? He got to hit it at the right time, because if he don't, what's going to happen? It's going to close. That space is going to close, and then his opportunity will have passed him. And so that's what Kairos means. Kairos means that there's an opportunity for us to do certain things, as long as that window is open. And when that window closes, then we no longer have that opportunity. And then we see Solomon said there's a time and a season, the word chronos. And the word chronos actually means a determined period of time. So whereas kairos might just be a moment in time, chronos means, you know, it could be a minute, a month, a year. You know, we use the word chronological, right? And that's where this comes from. Chronological, you know, chronos time is a determined period of time. So to, you know, to help you to remember the difference between the two, kairos is that opportune time. It may only last for a moment, whereas chronos is a determined period of time. You know, it, like I said, it may be a minute, a month, a year, etc. So Chicago, the group Chicago, right? They asked the question, does anybody really know what time it is, right? Do you know what time it is? Can you discern the times? Let's look at this, because it applies to all of our lives. All right, what we're getting ready to look at now. All things happen in cycles of time. All right, there's a time, as he says here, to be born, and a time to die, a time to plant, and a time to pluck up that which is planted. So he begins by saying that there are life cycles. You know, you had a time that you were born. All right. Naomi, you might need to put everybody on mute, because I'm hearing some background sounds. There's a time to be born, and there's a time to die. And so we all go through these life cycles. You know, I know in November, December, at the end of the year, you know, it seems like, you know, I was doing a funeral every week. You know, people were leaving this world, right? So there's that time when, and the thing about it, saints, you know, we have to grapple with the fact, you know, that we're not immortal. You know, we're not going to live forever. And so there are life cycles. You know, you already had your time to be born, and there's going to be a time when you depart this life. You know, we might not want to, and you know, but the fact is that these are life cycles. That there's a time to plant, and there's a time to dig up. You know, you can't plant, you know, in here in Pittsburgh, you can't plant in November and December, right? That's not the time to plant. You know, time to plant is May, June, and then the time to dig up is, you know, August, October. So he talks about these life cycles. He says, in life, you will go through destructive and restorative cycles, right? Just think about your life. Now, you know, again, you know, he says here that there's a time to kill. So, you know, we struggle with that one right there, But we do see in the Bible where, it does say that there's a time when lives are taken. Now, it's not up to, us as far as, when that permission is granted. God is the one that still is over that. But he said there's a time to kill, and then there's a time to heal. There's a time to break down, and there's a time to build up. I think about whenever we built the Bethany Center, and now we've built a new sanctuary. What do we do to the old building across the street? There was a time to break it down. It was costing a lot of money to keep it going. There was a time to break it down, and then there's a time to build up. So there's destructive and restorative cycles in life. There's gloomy and jubilant circles in life. That there's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. And so we need to know the appropriate times. We need to know when is it the appropriate time to weep. When somebody's hurting, you don't go up laughing and joking, right? And but there are times when you laugh. There are times when you have a good time. There's times when you need to know the seasons. You need to know what cycle that you're in life, because if you don't understand the cycle that you're in, there's the possibility of offending someone, of hurting someone. There's a time to mourn, right? Whenever again somebody has a loss, it's a time to mourn. And then there's a time to dance when God does something special in your life, or whenever you feel happy and you want to dance. So there's a time to mourn and a time to dance. There's acceptance and rejection cycles, right? There's time that we accept things, and then there's time that we reject things. There's a time to cast away stones. There's a time to gather stones, right? There's a time to embrace, and there's a time to refrain from embracing. You can't go embrace somebody if they got a knife, right? What did the OJs say? Backstabbers, right? So you got to be careful, right? Who you embrace. There's a time to embrace, time not to embrace. Time to gather stones, time to throw away stones. All right. So the point is there are acceptance and rejection cycles in life. Notice this. There are times to possess and times that we don't possess. These are cycles in life. There's a time to get. You need to go out here and get it. And then there's a time that you might lose it, right? There's a time to keep, and there's a time to cast away, right? I think about giving stuff away to the Goodwill, right? Or, giving stuff to Community Day. You know how when you go through your stuff and, you start going through it and you don't want to get rid of anything, because, this has this meaning, or I might wear this again, or if I lose weight, I might, so we want to keep everything. But maybe we need to take Solomon's advice and realize, hey man, there's a time to get rid of that stuff, right? There's a time to cast away. There's a time to keep, time to cast away. There's wisdom cycles. There's cycles when we need to have wisdom. We need to know when to tear, and we need to know when to sow. We know when to keep silent, and we need to know when to speak. I would say probably that keeping silent is one that will really help us out a whole lot, right? To know when to keep silent and then to know when to speak. And so you need to have wisdom to know what cycle that you're in. And then there's extreme cycles, right? Love and hate, war and peace. So these are cycles that we might all go through, each and every one. And then we may be spared some of these cycles. But these are cycles in life that Solomon observed. But notice this, that God is the orchestrator of life cycles, right? And that's what Solomon is telling us, that God orchestrates life cycles. I like the song, and we see this here in Ecclesiastes, where in verse 11, it says, he has made all things beautiful. He has made all things beautiful in his time. You know, the chorus that is sung, in his time, he makes all things beautiful in his time. Lord, please show me every day as you're teaching me your way that you'll do just what you say in your time. That God makes all things beautiful in his time. So, you know, we need to realize that these cycles that we just looked at, these cycles in life, that life under the sun, God uses the seasons of life to make all things beautiful. So that when we have a loss, remember he said there's a time to keep and a time to lose. When we have a loss, we know that God is working all things together for our good. He's making all things beautiful. You know, I think of when my in-laws were alive. They had 19 grandchildren, and my sister-in-law got each one of the grandchildren to she gave them a little patch about 4 inches by 4 inches, and she told them to put something that meant something to them on the patch. And then when they did that, they gave it to my sister-in-law, and she made a quilt with all these patches on it. And there was all these patches, but you know what? To my in-laws, it was beautiful. Why? Because it represented the things that their grandchildren had made for them, things that were special to them. It was beautiful. And so isn't that these cycles of life? Just think about it. These cycles of life that God uses them and he makes them beautiful in his time. You know, we often wonder what blessings can come out of somebody dying, right? I mean, when you think about, people that have lost their lives, and even young people that have lost their lives, and you wonder, life under the sun. Solomon said that which is crooked can't be made straight under the sun, under the S-U-N, but under the S-O-N. God is able to take that tragedy and make it into something beautiful. We don't want to hear that at the time that we're going through it. And I understand that. We don't want to hear that. But once we get on the other side of that hurt and grief, we need to realize that even the most devastating situations in life, God makes all things beautiful in his time. God brings the appropriate event for the appropriate time. That under the sun, if God is not in it, then things happen to us and we have a hard time processing. But when we know that God, when we know that God is in control, and we go back through these life cycles, we realize that God allows them to come into our life at his ordained time, that they don't randomly come, but God orchestrates these things, and that he brings them into our lives according to his plan and according to his purpose. We see that God wants mankind to enjoy the fruit of his labor. Notice what he says in Ecclesiastes 3, verses 12 and 13. I know there is no good in them, but for man to rejoice and do good in his life. And also every man should eat and drink and enjoy the good of all his labor. It is a gift of God to rejoice, to do good, to eat and drink and enjoy the fruit of your labor. So these life cycles, God said, as we go through these life cycles, that we should enjoy life. Enjoy life. Once you deal with the bitterness of the negativity of these cycles, man, enjoy your life. There's one thing that if the Lord took my life today, I would say I had a good life. Early on in my life, I was out there in the world, doing things out there in the world. Thought I was enjoying life, but really didn't know the enjoyment of life until I came into a relationship with Christ, right? A true relationship. And I have enjoyed my life. I have enjoyed my family. You know, I've enjoyed serving at Bethany Baptist Church. I have enjoyed that. Have enjoyed friends that I've made outside of that. I go to the gym. I got a whole group of people at the gym. You know, one of the things that I love, you know, is there's black men my age, right, who are positive. You know, you deal with a lot of black men that is into negativity, but just to deal with black men who are into positive things, you know, and just when we see each other, you know, there's one brother, man, I love you, man, you know, and we talk about things, we talk about life, you know, and so even though I work out when I go, man, I enjoy that. So again, I'm not saying that my life is a bed of roses. I'm not saying that it's all peaches and cream. No, that's not my point. But my point is life under the sun, that, you know, we have to enjoy it. You know, we deal with these life cycles, but, you know, once we, you know, we enjoy the positive life cycles, and we, you know, deal with the negative ones. But once we get through, man, we got to enjoy life. As man goes through the cycle of events, he should fear and submit to God. Look at verse 14. I know whatsoever God does, it shall be forever. Nothing can be put to it, nor anything taken away from it. And God does it, and men should fear before him. See, this is when your life have meaning, is that if you just live under the S-U-N, your life has no meaning. But when you live under the S-O-N and you fear God, that God is able to use the life cycles to bless your life. And then the last thing, those who forget lessons learned in past cycles may be doomed to repeat them. So, you know, as we go through the cycles of life, you know, we need to learn lessons and apply those lessons to our heart so that we are not doomed to repeat those lessons. So I got it in 2 lessons. I can't get no satisfaction. And then time. Timing is everything. Does anybody know what time it is? So we'll stop sharing and see if there are any questions.
Man, it's quiet. Sandra